In this video, we'll explore the mathematical language routine, 3 reads.
Before diving into the routine, we want to first outline what you can expect from us during our time together. We'll introduce 3 reads, and then model the routine. We'll offer a guide to the routine and connect you to resources for future inquiry and practice.
In order to make this the best experience for you, while viewing this video, we suggest you do the following. Pause at critical reflection points to give yourself time to think. Pair this learning with the guide and note catcher, the provided resources that go along with this information. Additionally, we encourage you to experience this video with a coach, colleague, and/or a PLC. Collaborating with others can help to identify ways to make this routine easier to implement and increase student buy-in. And finally, learning is a journey. Come back to this video as many times as you need to grow. Equitable algebra instruction requires us to engage all students' thinking through positioning them as sense makers and valued contributors in mathematics learning. One method to not only spark curiosity and interest while also prioritizing student voice is a multi-step academic routine called 3 reads. So what does this routine entail? Think of 3 reads as having 3 criteria: mathematical language, reading foci, and cognition. When you apply all steps of the routine, you engage students in all 3. Specifically, 1. The teacher leads students to progress to the mathematical learning goal through the use of mathematical language. 2. The teacher leads students to comprehend mathematical text through multiple and focused reading opportunities. And 3. The teacher leads students to cognitive engagement by supporting sense-making and maximizing meta-awareness. Throughout the video, we'll keep returning to these criteria and building on them to help us customize this routine for our students. Let's see 3 reads in action. Imagine you're a student in an Algebra 1 lesson and about to experience 3 reads. To engage as a student during the model, please access the note catcher to record your ideas.
Now that you have your note catcher to record your ideas as a student, let's start the model. I will play the role of the teacher applying 3 reads.
And I will narrate the steps of the routine as he models. The teacher will model 2 steps. First, starting with leading students to understand the reading purpose, why the 3 reads routine is helpful, and how to engage in it. Then, the teacher will read the task to the students and have a question for them to discuss about what was read. This is the first read of 3 reads. To make the most of this model, access the video's note catcher now and write your thoughts as if you were a student. Here's the teacher applying the routine.
All right, everyone. This task is full of information, so we need to make sense of it. Let's engage in the 3 reads routine. The purpose of this routine is to comprehend the task and make deeper mathematical connections rather than focusing on just getting the answers. To start, I will read the task's information out loud. While I read with me independently and be ready to discuss questions in between each of the 3 reads. The first reading purpose will be to describe what the situation is about without using numbers. Here we go. The homeowner is worried about the work needed to maintain a grass lawn and flower beds, so she is now looking at some low-maintenance materials. She is considering a combination of the materials shown to cover the year. Her budget is still $3,000. Artificial turf, $15 per square foot. Gravel, $3 per square foot. Pause the video and describe what the situation is about without using numbers on your personal note catcher. You may have described the situation as a way to keep her lawn while staying within her budget, or as a project to minimize the cost of her lawn maintenance.
In the second read, the teacher rereads the task and has students identify its quantities and relationships.
Now we're going into our second read. Again, I'll read aloud the information, but this time I'll read more of the problem. The homeowner is worried about the work needed to maintain a grass lawn and flower beds, so she is now looking at some low-maintenance materials. She is considering a combination of the materials shown to cover the year. Her budget is still $3,000. Artificial turf, $15 per square foot. Gravel, $3 per square foot. Here is a graph representing some constraints in this situation. What can be counted or measured from the new information? Pause the video and write your thoughts down in your note catcher. You may have noticed the homeowner has a budget of $3,000. You may have also pointed out the artificial turf is $15 per square foot and the gravel is $3 per square foot. Those values can be counted and measured.
In the third read, the teacher will set a final purpose: to analyze the graph provided in the context of the problem. The teacher will also ask students to brainstorm possible strategies to answer the provided question. What combinations of turf and gravel meet the homeowner's constraints? This will help students connect the language from the problem to the reasoning needed to solve the problem while maintaining the cognitive demand of the task. Let's see the teacher do this.
Okay, we're going into our final read, the third read. Again, I'll read aloud all the information provided in the problem. The homeowner is worried about the work needed to maintain a grass lawn and flower beds, so she is now looking at some low-maintenance materials. She is considering a combination of the materials shown to cover the year. Her budget is still $3,000. Artificial turf, $15 per square foot. Gravel, $3 per square foot. What strategies can be used to identify the different combinations of turf and gravel that meets the homeowner's constraints? Pause the video and write your thoughts down your note catcher. You may have found two strategies to identify the different combinations of turf and gravel that meet the homeowner's constraints. Inspecting the line on the graph and using the information on the axes and in the coordinate pairs. Creating an equation given the values of the turf and gravel with her budget.
What you just experienced is an application of 3 reads through a reading purpose and 3 intentional reading foci. Check your understanding of the routine with a few questions. Summarize the routine as a series of 4 steps. Pause the video to give yourself time to think. Access your note catcher to check your thinking. And unpause it when you are ready to check your understanding. Be the teacher who applies this routine by first providing the purpose of the 3 reads routine to students. Then, facilitate the first read for students to orient to the situation and clarify any unfamiliar context. Students must identify specific quantities and relationships. Then, facilitate the second read to evaluate how quantities can be used to solve the task. Finally, facilitate the third read, allowing students to connect any language from the word problem to the thinking needed to solve the task. Here's something else to think about. During the routine, what are the teacher and students thinking about? Pause the video to give yourself time to think. Access the note catcher to record your thinking. And unpause it when you are ready to check your understanding. You probably noted that teachers created opportunities for sense-making and, along the way, students reflected on their thinking. Comprehension and metacognition are baked-in principles of the 3 reads routine, supporting sense-making and maximizing meta-awareness. Take a moment now to reference your 3 reads guide as we explain these 2 principles. By reading the entire task and providing 3 reading foci, we open opportunities for students to make sense of or comprehend multiple dimensions of the task and scaffold how they make meaning of the mathematical context. Concurrently, we facilitate opportunities for students to maximize their meta-awareness. That's the conscious thinking about their own thought processes and language use. This looks like students using and refining their mathematical language during conversation to be better understood and to access the mathematical thinking of their peers. Great instruction starts at the planning level, and while we'll look at all three criteria in this process, we'll zoom into the process of planning for mathematical language. Access the note catcher and guide now to reference the full task once again.
The 3 reads routine provides a structured way for students to comprehend complex text as the goal rather than merely solving. Some curricula have built-in guidance for this routine, like the RAISE curriculum. But if you're wondering how you can bring this into your classroom now, let's see what makes an activity a good fit for this routine. So how do you plan a grade-level task worthy of supporting sense-making and maximizing meta-awareness? Let's go back to the model. Here's the Algebra 1 task from before. I selected it because I believe it promotes sense-making and maximizes students' meta-awareness. This gives students the opportunity to concentrate on textual meaning before rushing to a solution or method to solve the problem. Why, you ask? Well, the first thing I notice about this task is that it may have an unfamiliar context, a homeowner who's trying to stay within her budget to maintain her grass, and includes detailed information about costs and budget. Additionally, there is a visual, a graph, that students need support interpreting because the context and graph are connected. Therefore, students may need support comprehending both. Both require students to continually interpret and apply their understanding. 3 reads is an excellent routine for these challenges. To ensure students understand the goal of this routine and prevent them from solving without a solid understanding of the context, I'll explain the reading purpose of the routine and how to participate. For the first read, my students should focus on the big idea of the situation by following along as I read. I see non-mathematical terms like maintain, flower beds, and gravel. So I'll ask them to describe what the situation is about without using numbers. With the context clear, I'll head into the second read. Now, when I read, I'll focus more on the specific values and relationships among them. This is where students will focus on naming what is countable or measurable in the situation. Once the specific values and relationships among them are clear, I'll facilitate the third read to brainstorm possible mathematical solution methods. I'll ask what strategies can be used to identify the different combinations of turf and gravel that meets the homeowner's constraints. The idea here is the routine supports sense-making and meta-awareness of mathematical language so students are ready to answer the questions in the task. Importantly, this routine will avoid a rush to merely solve and instead will use the information discussed during all 3 reads in a deeper way by communicating and negotiating the concepts in the task using mathematical language.
Check your understanding again. Is the goal of 3 reads to solve a mathematical task? Pause the video to give this some thought. Access the note catcher to record your thinking. And unpause it when you are ready to check your understanding. No, 3 reads is not used to solve tasks or merely for answer getting. Rather, it allows students to connect the language in the word problem and the reasoning needed to solve the problem while maintaining the cognitive demand of the task.
We encourage you to use what we've modeled to now plan and apply a task that you will teach. The RAISE curriculum is full of rich tasks that promote sense-making and maximize meta-awareness through 3 reads. Access the RAISE curriculum now to first identify a task for this routine that you will teach. Select an appropriate task and ask yourself, does the task require support for reading comprehension? Pause the video now to identify your task and return to advance when ready.
Now that you have a task, access the 3 reads guide to inform your planning. Access the RAISE guide now, and specifically the plan column's mathematical language, foci, and cognition criteria. Using the guide, first, plan to introduce the routine or the purpose. by providing the why of using the routine. Next, plan to present the task implementing the first read. This is only allowing the chance for the context of the task to be shared. After the first read, be sure to unpack with the students what the task is about, engaging them in conversation to facilitate a greater awareness of the mathematical terms in the task. Then, plan to implement the second read. It is here where you want students to find relationships to the values presented in the task. Finally, plan to implement the third read, asking students to brainstorm possible strategies to answer a given question. Pause the video now to plan your application, and return to advance when ready. What could it take to improve this routine even further? Let's zoom in on one of the ways we can optimize the foci in this routine. Access the note catcher and guide now to reference the full task once again. Optimizing this routine means differentiating the foci by proficiency levels or using visual aids. Let me show you what I mean with the first option. Foci are differentiated by proficiency levels.
Recall that we first presented the task by sharing the purpose with the students. Then, the teacher implemented the first read. Afterwards, the teacher had students describe what the situation is about. To optimize the routine, differentiate the questions to provide an on-ramp for students who may struggle to respond. For example, before asking students to describe what the situation is about without using numbers, ask them to first describe the situation in any way they want. By allowing students to choose how they respond, students will feel invited to contribute and, as a result, engaged in the sense-making process. Once you have them describe the situation without numbers, they can then focus on how to use language differently and help build their language meta-awareness. In another example, instead of first asking students what can be counted or measured from the new information to identify relationships among the values, begin by discussing major concepts. For instance, we could ask, what does a budget mean? Why is it important? This leads students to create potential connections to the other values in the task, and it promotes sense-making of their relationships.
We set the purpose to make algebra accessible to all students. We also looked at and engaged in the criteria for effective implementation of 3 reads. Now it's time for you to determine your next steps.
Where will you focus your energy to effectively implement 3 reads for your students? First, reference the guide before we ask you to consider these questions.
If you are new to this routine or just beginning to identify tasks in which to cultivate conversations between your students and maximize their meta-awareness, then begin here to identify paths and plan for those opportunities.
Once you have identified a task and described how it will develop students' sense-making and meta-awareness, begin here to define the major steps of using 3 reads in your classroom.
When you are ready to apply the routine in your lesson, you are here.
When you are seeking to optimize your ability to implement the routine and stretch students into modeling the routine and maximizing meta-awareness of their thinking, you are here.
When you have reached a place where 3 reads is a normalized routine, and you would like to extend the effectiveness to other dimensions of the mathematics classroom, you are here.
Review the resources listed at the end of this video.
We enjoyed sharing this routine with you, and we're hoping you apply 3 reads to provide access to algebra for all students.